Hey everyone, we are Kairos Coffee Chats. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Today's episode will be one of our many Teaology talks, where we specifically address tough questions regarding Christianity.
We are very aware of all the tea that comes with theology. So, this is our space to spill it all.
So buckle up and let's dive in.
What's up everybody? My name is Ryan.
I'm Jared.
And we are Kairos Coffee Chats.
This podcast exists as a safe space for you to bring your questions and rethink faith so that you can encounter Jesus personally.
Welcome back to Kairos Coffee Chats. We are on episode 20 now. Thank you all for being here.
Here for another Teaology talk.
We're here for it, and we're going to keep doing this. We are excited to talk about...
a light subject.
Very light.
Morality.
Good and evil.
Are people good?
Are they trustworthy? Can we trust humans to define good and evil?
Should we even be here?
Do we deserve to be here? We're going to answer all that in this episode. But until we get to that,
where we will start out light. This guy over here wanted to do like an equally hard icebreaker. No, we're not doing that.
I had another one, but we chose a different one for sake of
It's one of those horrible,
ease.
impossible would you rathers of just like both these are terrible, and I'd rather just not be here. So no, we're not doing that one. We're doing all right. We just do icebreakers. This is like a choice. Ryan, would you rather never feel physical pain or never feel emotional pain?
Oh man, because if you go one way, if you go the not feeling physical pain route, you know, there's always, I immediately thought of the TV show Heroes. There's a girl who can't feel pain.
Okay.
And she ends up becoming crucial to the plot because she can't feel pain. She's basically immortal. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't be able to feel alive if I didn't feel physical pain. I feel like, I would choose that one. At the same time, I would choose the physical pain because if you also feel emotionally numb to everything,
That's what I was thinking.
you also couldn't feel like you had feelings.
Yeah.
The danger, obviously, with never feeling physical pain is like if you stub your toe and
You're constantly checking yourself.
You're always like, did I hurt myself today? I'd be walking around careful everywhere.
That's true. I remember there was an episode of this show House. It's like a doctor show.
I know what you're talking about.
There was a girl who it's like an actual thing. Some people just don't feel pain. It's an actual medical condition. But yeah, every time like her mom was just like checking her every day because like you don't feel if you just get a little cut or whatever. Like the thing opens with like they get in a car accident and she's calling like from the middle of the wreck, like her mom's in critical, and the dispatcher's like, "Are you hurt or anything?" She's like looks around and her legs just like completely impaled through, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm okay."
Bruh.
Yeah.
As she's bleeding out and impaled.
Yeah. But in the same vein, I'm with you. I'd go no physical pain.
Yeah.
Because I just think of, if you haven't figured this out about me, I think in terms of TV shows. I think about One Punch Man.
Okay.
At the beginning, when he just doesn't feel anything, it's emotional. Like, which also bleeds into another thing of like he starts feeling more emotions the more community he's around, the more people come into his life.
Yeah, I remember that.
Just like, we need people. But yeah, feeling no emotions. It might couple with like not feeling physical pain, but I feel like it's different. So I'd definitely go no physical pain because that just would rock. It comes with its own things, but like I feel like that would rock a lot harder than no emotional pain, because so much emotional pain like causes growth. Not as much as physical pain, I feel.
That's true.
Like maybe you're not feeling the physical pain of like I think about being in the gym or something, and you're like you don't want to tear a muscle. You can kind of account for those things. I feel like just don't lift stupid heavy.
Yeah. This is all. I'm also thinking this question too depends on the person being asked. Obviously, it's an opinion question, but also it's based a lot on the person's experience with physical and emotional pain too. I feel like this would be totally different if we weren't
asking two athletes.
Two athletes, exactly.
No physical pain. Yes. No more burning lungs when I run.
Like, I imagine those who are listening who have had a lot of emotional pain and are tired of feeling emotional pain.
Wouldn't hesitate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So this really is a subjective question.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And we don't want to discount anyone's experience on this podcast, of course. But
For sure.
yeah, we're just talking from our experience.
Jesus, bro, it was supposed to be a light icebreaker. Why are you bringing all this?
I don't know. I always end up going too
real
deep.
life things. What the heck? Anyways,
Speaking of real life things today.
Life and things that we think aren't as subjective. Hot take. As we said, we're going to talk about morality. So in our last theology talk, last time, we were talking about science and religion and how they fundamentally are meant to answer fundamentally different questions. One's about the physical and the now and like material.
Natural world.
Natural world. The other one's about, I mean, if you don't believe in a spiritual realm, if there is one, and toning it down, just the other aspects of human existence that aren't physical, like our emotions, like consciousness, like those sorts of things that we know are very real and quote unquote tangible, but science can't really account for.
Yep.
And in that's when you bleed into morality, and here we are now.
Yeah. Last theology talks, we laid down this very simple framework that one of my favorite apologists kind of uses. I will reiterate this again for sake of redundancy and clarity. So the framework that he uses is he breaks down every worldview into 4 different questions, or categories of questions, rather. There's questions about origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. So the question of origin discusses how we came to be, where did everything come from, where did I come to be, or how did I come to be? Questions of meaning talk about what's the purpose of life, what gives life meaning. Morality talks about what defines good and evil, which is our topic today. And then destiny, what happens to us after we die.
Yeah.
So today we're hitting on the third category, morality. What does define good and evil? How does the world define good and evil? How does God define good and evil? What should our standard be? Are people inherently good? We're going to talk about all of those definitions and implications because bleeding from our previous episode or theology talks, we made the case that if you don't have a religious framework and you're only relied on a scientific worldview, there is nothing in a scientific worldview alone that basically says that you have innate value and that you deserve to be treated respectfully and that you have rights, that you deserve to have life and live to the full. There is nothing that gives you inherent value in a solely scientific worldview unless you bring in an external source that provides you that inherent intrinsic value.
Exactly. Like if it's all just natural, if we're all an accident, then there is no value, as you said. So we can then just, whatever happens. It's all fair game. And it's just like, we're no different than animals.
Survival of the fittest.
And we don't judge animals, as we talked about last time. We don't judge animals for hunting other species, sometimes even their own. Like, it's just part of life, circle of life. We all saw Lion King. So, as you said, what is good? What is evil? There's different definitions. The one I'd start with is these kind of questions just bring more questions to my mind. Like, you can only say something is good if you know its intended purpose. So a chair is not a good paperweight. It doesn't mean it doesn't fulfill that function. But a chair on your desk holding down paper is not only it's not intended use, but it interferes with the functions of a desk as well. So therefore, you can say it's not good.
Okay.
When we say what is good in this world, the framework we use is what is our purpose is kind of going back to the 4 main points, meaning. What is our meaning? What is the reason for us being here? And then from that, you can derive the definitions of good. Which,
what is good? What is not good?
Which, as we read in the Bible, it's to be in relationship with God.
And we'll talk more about that towards the end.
Yes. And anything that gets in the way of that, drives a wedge, and just separates and doesn't bring together is what we categorize as evil.
Correct.
The world, and this is kind of a blanket statement, but this is one you hear a ton, you hear around. It's so long as I'm not hurting anybody, it is good. Especially if it feels good.
Yeah.
If it's pleasurable emotions, like that's how it goes. That is good.
I can do whatever I want.
I won't mess with you. You don't mess with me. We're good.
You do you.
You do you. You live your truth. You do all that stuff. Then we're fine. That's a modern, highly individualistic Western concept of good and evil.
Very Western. Stay in your own lane.
Very Western. And that's one we grew up in. We're here in America.
Yeah.
Welcome to America.
American dream, baby.
I will say, I like this. I like this country. I will be the first to knock it, and also recognize the amazing opportunities I have being here. How blessed I am to be here. So it's not all bad. There's just pitfalls, like anything.
How does this fall short then? What is that seems okay and almost comforting to hear that. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, I can live however I want. Doesn't matter what anyone else says about me, as long as I'm not hurting anyone.
Right.
Who's to say that you can tell me what to do, or anyone can tell me what to do?
So even taking afterlife out of it, our actions here matter after we are dead. Take that out of the equation. C.S. Lewis has a brilliant analogy for morality in Mere Christianity. He defines it as a fleet of ships, of sailing ships. And there's 3 parts to a fleet. There's the individual ship. It has to be well maintained and seaworthy. It's not gonna. It's if it can't float, if it can't move, then it'll crash into the other ships. It won't be able to keep the formation that's the safest for them to make it to their destination. The fleet itself has to be moving in the same direction. If not, then they're going to crash into each other, and the formation's broken. And third part is they all have to be heading the same way. They all have to arrive at the same destination. They could be seaworthy, not crash into each other, but if they all arrive at the wrong destination, it's all for naught in a sense. So that's the 3 parts of morality. The worldly view of, as long as I don't hurt anybody, I'm fine, it just focuses on the first part.
And it also assumes that there's only one ship, that you're the only
one. Yeah, you're not part of a team. There's no, for lack of a better, a team aspect. It's just me. I'm just trying to live my life. Which, again, that's why we come back to the Western context. Because it is about us. It's maximizing our life, maximizing what we want to do, and fully realizing our potential. That's just how we've been raised, how we've been taught, how we think. By no real fault, because there's good things to that. But again, there's pitfalls, just like anything. There's pitfalls to super, patriarchal societies where it's all about the family and individual doesn't matter as much, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But so as I was saying, the C.S. Lewis argues that if you don't have all 3, then you fail at some point in morality. And that's the argument against what you see today. The I'm not hurting anybody, it's okay. A practical example of that, how does that flesh out in real life? Anyone who's addicted to substances. If they're technically not hurting, I'm not saying okay, you're not a drug addict stealing from somebody, you're not out of your mind crazy hurting someone. I've had family members addicted to substances and they're very to themselves. it's the ship that runs into others, because if it can't get out of the way, if it's not fully functional, it's going to cause collisions.
It's going to hinder the family.
It's not only hinder the family, but it's just going to cause just strife. I've seen this firsthand. So no, you are not physically harming someone.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fulfill all those needs and roles that morality has.
You know, this reminds me of, I remember during 2020, my young adults group, we went through a Bible study on justice, actually. And one of the studies talked about a South Korean or an Asian news network that was reporting on an incident that happened in one of their communities. And if that were to happen, like say something happened in our immediate communities here in America, or like a friend of a friend does something, harms another like neighbor, or and brings, I guess, shame to that neighborhood or whatnot. The temptation in Western society is to say, that's them, that's their problem to deal with. I'm not responsible for what they did. Like, they're bad, I'm not bad. This Korean news network, again, you can fact check me on this. When they were reporting on this incident, the broadcasters or like the news anchors, they were collectively taking responsibility for the actions of that individual in their communities. As a society, they were taking ownership, saying like, what this person did, it isn't representative of what we stand for, but we are going to take responsibility for someone in our community, in our nation. And I think that's what's different about Western society and I guess Asian society and some other, maybe like in the Middle Eastern societies. There was a collective ownership. Not saying it's perfect. You know, we can talk about political systems like communism versus capitalism. That's not what we're going to talk about here.
I don't know.
But there is a level of like, in the church, especially in the Western church, we also do the same thing. Like someone in our church is living an unrepentant life, or like we have pastors who end up being accused of mismanaging funds or finances or sexual immorality, all these unfortunate instances. We push those individuals away, saying that that's their own problem. We're not responsible for them. When the church is supposed to be a collective family that is responsible for each other, that takes ownership of each other. So that's just one example that I thought of, like individualism versus collectivism.
Yeah, I think it's
in this sense.
It's a very humbling sense of humility. Like whatever happened, whatever may happen, you see it in another person. It takes a lot of humility to see that person and see yourself there as like, I'm not so amazing. I'm not so perfect. I don't have it all together enough to where that's not completely out of the equation for me. It's like I've said this before. Just like you are so much more like all of us. I'm not gonna say you. I am so much more like the worst criminal in prison than I am like God, and that will always be the case for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Now I feel like some people might counter you and say, but I'm not that bad. Like I don't relate to those people, those criminals. I could never do what they do. I have more capacity to do good, and I want to do good. So like, how would you answer that?
You could that might be true in your intentions, but it doesn't diminish the capacity. And it's just like, if we're just measuring by good deeds, it's just something I don't want to be a part of. Like I don't want to do that. It looks like fertilizer for pride, because the more we just try and distance ourselves from people, like you were talking about in the news article, there's no relation to that, and it puts you up on a pedestal, puts whoever you're talking about, criminals, offenders, whatever you want to talk about, just knocks them down a peg. We're not seeing all of us as humanity, and if the purpose of life is to be in relationship with people and with God and build bridges, and evil and sin is trying to drive a wedge between that, why would I introduce another factor that drives a wedge that makes me distant from other people, no matter who or where they are? So I'm just like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like you can if you want. I don't recommend it.
The comparison is what we do all the time. We
compare
all the time.
Yeah. Even in little things when we're not talking about like our like huge moral actions. Comparison's a killer. Yeah. Like in all ways, shapes, and forms. Yeah. So
it truly is. Now, along this same line of thinking, talking about good and evil and how the world defines them or not, it actually reminds me of this project that I did in AP Euro. It was the first AP that I took. Great class. I loved my teacher. It was like his first year teaching, Mr. Lively, if you ever listened to this.
He must have been lively if it was his first.
Funny guy.
First year fun guy.
He was awesome. He was young, fiery, loved history. And he had a good midterm for us. Like the project that we had to do, I remember like working on this too, like until like 4 a.m. in the morning with my friend Matt Lamb and our other partner David O, who ended up playing basketball that same time that we had to like finish the project. He was playing basketball instead of helping us. I remember that time.
Not the friend who does nothing.
Yeah, we don't forget that David O. Sorry.
I swear. No, I just the name dropping. This boy out here trying to play basketball. I mean, he shouldn't have. But like just calling him out by name, man, is diabolical. I'm here for it, but continue.
Anywho, bygones be bygones. This is 10th grade. The project that Mr. Lively had us do was to make a case or a presentation that answered this question. Does humanity deserve the right to exist? Which already assumes that...
You're asking 10th graders this?
Yeah. 10th graders. Because we had just gone through it was
halfway through the school year, so...
Yeah, a whole year of... it was a final, not a midterm, now I think about it. Because it was a whole year of talking about, the Middle Ages, the French Revolution, the Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution, or World War I, II, the Cold War, the bloodiest 20th century ever. And we had to compile all this information and say, like, does humanity deserve the right to exist?
And this is all the stuff that just happened in Europe.
Yeah. Which flooded throughout the whole world, right? Right? And, man, so much of we focus on Europe a lot, huh? But so much in the East has happened, too. In Asia, that has been central. We always focus on what happens in Europe, spreading throughout the rest of the world.
And then whatever it does, yeah.
Anywho, that's a different topic. Inherent in the question, does humanity deserve the right to exist? You have to define the implications of what it means to deserve something. Does that mean, deserving something implies that you are worthy of getting a reward for X, Y, and Z?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the word right, we're talking about, is there a justifiable, undeniable, logical reason or justification for us to exist in the first place? Rights are a very hot topic today, as we can all just look on the news for those, who has rights for what. I have the right to do X, Y, and Z. I have the right to live the way I want to. You can look at it that way. So you have to define all those terms first. So we had to survey all those different world events that happened. All the good things that happened, all the bad things that happened, and do we still deserve the right to exist? And, if I were to follow up that question with a different project, I would probably I would probably follow up that question with well then, based on that question, or your answer to that question, can we trust humanity with defining good and evil? If we are still going to exist, can we trust humanity? Is humanity the best source of morality that we can come up with? Because we have, I've heard the counter argument made that humanity has developed morality because we have deemed it good for the survival of our species. that over time it is good for the majority of us to live and to propagate the human race. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
Well, you are presupposing moral terms by putting in, like, is it good for humanity to exist? Is it bad for humanity to exist? Who said so? Is it just majority opinion? Like, the Eskimo society, they are known for their, well, I'll put it lightly, their lack of care for infants. I'm going to read this excerpt from this article from Clark M. Garber, who writes about the Eskimos. I apologize if this is graphic, but this is what he wrote. Surprising and tragic as it may seem, many Eskimo babies get only a brief glimpse of their mothers and the world's bright light before their barely started existence as mortals is unceremoniously brought to an end. In other words, Eskimo mothers, under stress of unbearable economic conditions or through whims that have no foundation in reason, are known to destroy their babies. I won't go further. You can imply how that goes about. So the kind of argument is made is like, is morality a matter of cultural preference or cultural development? Mm-hmm. Who's to say that one culture's practices of, say, killing babies is morally right or wrong if it's not for an external standard? Is all relative? Does it depend on where you live? Or is morality possibly given to us by an external source? So you have two competing ideas, majority opinion or external opinion.
And it's, looking at the Bible, I don't trust human definition. There's this theme you can track throughout Genesis. Genesis 1 and 2 opens with God creating everything. And in this, you see God creates, God sees, calls it good. God creates, God sees, it was good. He does this 5-6 times throughout the days as he's creating everything. As soon as Genesis 3 happens in the fall, there's a theme you see with people. When people see and they deem something good, they take it. They try to take it. You see this in Genesis 3 with Adam and Eve and the snake. Eve is led to believe by the snake, you won't die, you'll be like God, blah, blah, blah. Then with that information, she looks at the tree, sees it's good for fruit, it's good, and then takes it. When we decide, it ends badly. This goes on again. Genesis 6. In the sons of God, which is like so debated on what they actually are.
Okay.
But it's these sons of God seeing women as good, God's creation as good, and taking them for themselves and creating like these monstrous things called Nephilim. That's a whole rabbit hole. I still want to learn more about that. And then in Genesis 11, a less material example is the Tower of Babel. When all of humanity, they want to make a name for themselves. They see a title or a position of status they want, and they try to seize it by building this tower to the heavens and all that. And God scatters them through language. It's this, you just see this over and over and over. When God sees and says it's good, it actually is. When humans try to decide for themselves, it like ends in ruin. And it just points back to kind of a truth we have just in everyday life. When we're talking about what's good or bad, it depends on the function. If a function breaks on your car, you go to the manufacturer to tell you, oh, this is meant to do that, so this is how you fix it. This is how everything gets put back in order. This is right. This is good for this car. Because they made it. They gave it the purpose. Same thing with board games. They give you the list of rules so it's played out well. Outside of Uno, you stack those draw fours. I don't know what they're thinking. Uno, we'll take it from here.
Total side note. I saw Twitter from the official Uno account like a few days ago or a week ago that said that you cannot stack draw fours or draw twos. Yeah.
They don't know what they're talking about. That's the caveat to what I'm saying is Uno has no idea. I'm out here to ruin friendships. We're stacking these things. They made a game called Uno No Mercy.
Fair.
You can't tell me not to stack these things and just cause utter despair to the person to my right. Sorry. Anyways, we trust the people who make the thing to tell us what's good for it. We need to trust the person who made us, the all-powerful being that made us, to tell us what good and evil is. So what is that? What does God define? How does he define good and evil? How do we believe that? Why do we believe Christianity provides the right objective framework to define morality?
If we can't figure it out, what does God say about it? So, man, I think of like God like the sun. If you imagine just how purely hot it is, like the closer you get to it, the hotter it gets, the more intense his heat gets, and anything like any closer, you'll burn up. If the intensity of like God's goodness, if we define God as all good, as he says he is, then that means that he's the standard, because if he is good, he cannot be evil. He has to have, like, he has to be perfect, or else it's just relative. He has to be the straight line in order for us to realize what a crooked line looks like.
It has to be There has to be a baseline.
Mm-hmm. And it can't just be majority opinion, because we've already tried doing that.
It changes.
Yeah, every century it
and
changes.
Are we taking the census of the entire planet? Are we taking the census of a country? Does the population of that country matter? Like, what? Yeah, it's too subjective.
Yeah. If anyone says like killing 20 million Jews is, subjectively good, then you have no reason to condemn him for doing that.
Yeah.
So God defines...
I just want to put this out here real fast. We condemn that.
Yes.
I feel so stupid just the fact that we have to lay it out there, but I'm just going to say that right now. We know World War II was bad.
The reason why God defines good for us in different ways in the Bible is because, one, we can't figure it out. We failed at every turn. It ends in ruin when we try. And God knows that we need help doing that. So the first time he does that is when he gives Moses the law on Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
When he gives the Israelites the standard of what it means to be good. And what does he define as good? Being in relationship with him. He wanted to have a relationship with the Israelites and eventually with the whole world, because he made the whole world. But they continue to fail at loving each other and at loving him. You cannot love someone, we believe, for how they were meant to be loved until you experience the love of God yourself and you know how much God loves you.
We're able to love because he first loved us.
Yeah.
Ring any bells? And also I think it goes to show, like, even if it's laid out before us, a list of do's and don'ts, we're still going to mess it up.
Yeah. And God knew that. There were 613 laws in there.
Couldn't be any more exhaustive.
Yeah, it was... I don't think any human can even follow 10 laws perfectly.
Right. Right.
Let alone 5. And so if God defines being in relationship with him as the creator of good, the essence of love, being related to that essence of good and love as good, that's where Jesus comes in. Jesus is the epitome of living a good life, because it is in perfect relationship with God when he was on earth. And he demonstrated that for us throughout his life and his death and his resurrection.
Yes.
And still does to this day.
That's very true. And that definition of good is bringing us back into relationship. Absolutely.
For the record, as we previously mentioned, we define good, or the Bible defines good rather, as anything that promotes and helps your relationship with God flourish and helps you to love others. Loving God and loving others is what is good. And that even goes so far, that kind of love goes so far as to love your enemies. Because when you do that, you start not comparing with other people who you think are lesser than you or who are worse than you, because God levels the playing field. We are all sinners and have fallen short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. Even if you think you're the best person on earth, even if you haven't murdered or committed adultery or have done all these other
just lived your spotless
crazy
life.
things.
Yeah, this makes me think about, there's this stream of thought in Christianity it's called Calvinism. It's a theological position. And the big thing of Calvinism is 5 points. The acronym is called TULIP. T is for total depravity. U is for
unconditional election.
L is for limited atonement. I is for irresistible grace. And P is for perseverance of the saints. That was a lot of big words. We're not worried about most of them. The main one we're talking about is T, total depravity. It's this idea that people are just depraved. We are just absolutely incapable of anything good.
We are trash.
We're trash. We're absolutely trash. And the Bible does make some claims, like not more than some. Like the whole biblical story is God partnering with people messing it up, God coming in to partner with more people until he has to partner with the perfect person.
Yeah.
Apart from God, we are just unable to do it. So yeah, it points in that direction. And I can understand, because our goal is relationship with Christ, which is salvation, which is justification. We contribute nothing to our justification or being saved, going to heaven, having an afterlife, eternal life. We don't contribute anything to that. So it does follow, like, okay, if we're not able to do anything good for that, then we're totally depraved. I'm hesitant on that. Yes, we don't contribute jack squat. But it doesn't mean we are incapable of any good action, which I don't think any Calvinist would say.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's what's in the mind. That's what, like, when it comes to salvation, when it comes to right relationships, it's from God. God has to do all of the work because we're incapable of in and of ourselves.
Now the argument can be made too is, can't non-Christians do good things too? I would say yes.
Yes,
also.
and that's part of it. Yeah. Like if an atheist builds an orphanage, that is objectively good.
Very.
Like it's objectively good. That does not get them closer to heaven.
Yeah.
Like if Jesus is not their Lord and Savior, it does nothing. It does not move the needle one bit. So it depends on kind of how you're looking at it. It is good in the now. I mean, taking care of the widow and the orphan is a big part of what a Christian should look like in their life, in the physical, in walking it out, having a transformed heart. Those things, they are good works. Yeah. They don't save us, though.
Yeah. Which we'll get more into in our next episode.
That's a lot more. Yeah.
Well,
so again, we're kind of teasing. That's like the post-credit scene in Marvel movies. Like this teases a further thing out. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the implications on how we define good and evil is then, like, what is the motivation for doing good and evil? Why should we do good and not do evil?
Right.
Which will be the next episode, which is why we teased it. So, to conclude this exposition on defining good and evil, I want to go to John 13, which is the story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet, and also when Jesus is about to be betrayed by Judas. So I'm going to read from this passage. I'm going to skip some for sake of brevity, but I want to encourage you all who are listening to listen, or pull it up if you want, to listen to like the order of events that happen. For those of you who have not been raised in Christian circles or have a faith background, Jesus goes to the cross because of Judas, essentially, because he sells him out to the religious elite and gets him killed.
Judas was a rat.
But Jesus loved him.
Yes.
And I'll prove to you why. Verse 1 in chapter 13. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. This is verse 1. So we're going to come back to that. I'm going to repeat that. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. Then Jesus basically, he goes through this whole practice of washing his 12 disciples' feet, which is considered the duty of a slave in their society.
Mm-hmm. Peter, vehemently, is like, no, never shall you wash my feet. He's like, you ain't got no part of me if I ain't wash your feet. He's like, then bathe all of me.
And then Jesus starts alluding to, not all of you are clean, however. And eventually starts teaching about what he just did for all his disciples. He says, do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. This is Jesus' expression of love towards all 12 disciples, even though he already knew, as it said in the previous verses, that Judas was going to betray him. Mm-hmm. He still washed his feet. Later on, in a couple of verses later, he basically tells them all, I am not speaking of all of you. I know who I have chosen. Basically alluding to that one of them is going to betray him. And he says this out aloud in front of all 12. Mm-hmm. He's also comforting the disciples, saying this is going to happen to me. I'm going to be delivered and put to death.
And he's been telling them this.
Yeah,
he's been telling
them
this,
time.
The son of, I'm going to be given over and I will die. He says it plainly, and they're all just like, what?
Mm-hmm. And they just don't get it. Mm-hmm. So this passage, whatever you might think about Judas, about to betray Jesus, who has done nothing wrong, Jesus still expresses love towards Judas by warning him, hey, watch out. You have a choice to choose me right now. Mm-hmm. I know you and I have loved you. You are blessed if you do these things that I tell you to do. Verse 17. If Judas chose to do that, chose to love others, chose to follow Jesus' example, mm-hmm. then he wouldn't have been taken over by his thoughts, by the devil.
Exactly.
Jesus still loved Judas, even though he knew what he was going to do. And he still warns him, hey, this sin that you're about to do against me, I'm warning you, come back to me. Mm-hmm. It's like a final invitation, don't fall for these lies.
Yeah. And it's funny, too, because that's not the first time in the Bible this happened. Mm-hmm. You go back to, all the way back to the beginning, back to Genesis, chapter 4. You have the story of Cain and Abel. We all know, well, maybe not we all know, but it's one of the earliest stories. Right after the fall, Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden. They have these two kids, Cain and Abel. Cain is a farmer and cultivates the ground. Abel is a hunter. They both offer sacrifices to God. God favors Abel's sacrifice, and Cain gets pissed and jealous. God sees this. In Genesis 4, verse 6, then the Lord said to Cain, why are you so angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it.
This is literally the same instance.
It's literally the same. He's like, you have a choice. If you choose me, I will lift you up. He talks about his countenance, his demeanor, all just mm-hmm. lifting him up. But if not, you're gonna get devoured. It's crouching. What is just that imagery of something crouching at the door? I see just some kind of beast, some kind of monster just lurking, waiting to just dig into you. It's not pretty. And its whole desire is just for you. That's what sin is. Mm-hmm. So no matter what, the parallels between these two stories is that there's a choice. There is still a choice. Mm-hmm. And even though both of them choose evil, God still loves them.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the original questions that we asked, are humans inherently good? let's answer that one first. I would say we were made in the image of God. So I'd say at a baseline level, from the fact that we are created, because God's heart is to create, we are born with innate value that is good. But we do have the capacity for good and evil.
Absolutely. We are along the same lines. I believe that because we are every single human, whether you call yourself a Christian or not, we believe every single human is made in the imago Dei, made in the image of God. Worst person you hate, image of God. Most admired person in your life, image of God. Because that is true and you cannot throw that away. And also at the same time, it's true that our hearts are just evil, twisted, and bent towards sin and destruction and even our own demise. Those two truths coexisting at the same time, it causes us to, it's a yes and no. Yes and no. Humans can be good. God can use us. We if we want to be used by God, if we want to do good things, God can use that. Absolutely. Yeah. We don't disqualify ourselves.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean everything we do is good. It's not a binary because there's these two truths that oppose each other that let a war inside of us.
I believe Paul says it most eloquently when he talks about the sin in his own life. He constantly just says like, there are things that I don't want to do that I know are bad for me, but I do them anyway. I can't help myself from doing them. It's like a thorn in my side. I cannot get rid of it.
Romans 7, it's just the best because it just encapsulates that struggle. And it's every human's experience of trying to do good.
While also fighting evil.
That it's not like anything you can shield from, because how do you protect yourself from yourself?
Yeah. And I would say to add to that is like, if you're fighting the battle, actively fighting the battle between good and evil, you're doing the work. You are doing the work. Because the only person to ever win the battle is Jesus over good and evil. He's the only person to ever win. We can experience victory over evil through doing good when Jesus is at the center of our hearts. And again, people who aren't Christians can still do good ontologically. But there's a difference between fighting the battle and letting sin devour you. You've already lost. So for us here on earth, there's only two possibilities. Is either fight, you stay in the battle, in the middle of the tension, or you lose. You can experience victory here and there, but you will still be in the battle. You'll constantly be wavering back and forth.
On this side of eternity, says the victory, it's promised, but just hasn't happened yet. You're either fighting or you lost.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, whether sin is crouching at your door or not, we encourage you to look to Jesus instead as the arbiter of good, as the one who lived the perfect life, who defined what good is, which leads to a flourishing life, a full life that you can live free from sin crouching at your door.
Yeah.
You have access to the good life. The good life is being with God. The good life is God.
It is.
It's not...
That is the good. Yeah. That is the good we're looking for. In all these questions, we all want what's best. That's what we're ultimately looking for, is like that. I wouldn't go so far to say fulfillment to everything, but just what is going to give us the thing that fulfills us and is good in our life. And good is synonymous with God.
Yeah.
That is, in his nature, is part of how he is, his character. And you read it throughout Scripture. It's just him. If you're looking for it, it's him.
Yeah.
That's what we want to say. Like, Jesus coming down, bridging that gap, is an opportunity for us to find that good that we're all searching so desperately for.
And allows good to be done towards others also.
Yeah.
Jesus came to reconcile the world to himself because he knows that when you are with him, you will experience good.
It's just who he is. Yeah, it's a byproduct of just being in his presence.
Even if it rubs up against everything that you think is good or you think feels good, Our feelings are deceptive. Sorry to say that.
Oh, yeah.
We can get swayed by our hearts very easily, by our flesh very easily. And there is a lie that you are living, potentially, that your feelings are what is true about you. What is true about you is that you are made in the image of God, that you are worthy of value, you are worthy of love because you are made in God's image, because he made you with the capacity for love. It is not because of your feelings, though.
No, because the feelings, as Ryan was saying, they sway. We can believe lies so easily, but the truth is, God came down, he paid the price in his son just to give you a shot. It's still, the ball's in your court. It's to give you a shot at experiencing that good. It's not even a guarantee, but God said, you are worth it, just giving the opportunity to. I'll take it. Mm-hmm. Jesus said the same thing. That's what love looks like. That is the ultimate good, and that is what's presented before you today.
Yeah. So we hope that this episode was an invitation to rethink what you might feel is good and evil. Mm-hmm. Because we define good from an external source that is not majority opinion, that is not defined by cultural norms or society or by time or like how modern our society is. We define it based on a rock solid foundation that has been there for us at a personal level since we were born, since we were created, since this whole universe was created. It is an external source that we can rely on and that will never change. Because, again, as we said, being with God is what is good. Yes. So we invite you to rethink what that looks like for your life. Mm-hmm. If you really want to search for truth, if you want to figure out what should I live for, how should I live my life, why should I live my life, do I deserve the right to exist? God would say yes, you deserve the right to exist because he made you, for one thing.
You're here now.
Uh-huh. You're listening to this episode right now. And he wants you to experience life to the fullest. I'm going to keep repeating that verse again.
Yeah.
He did not come here to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what the thief, the enemy, wants to do.
That sin crouching at the door.
Mm-hmm. That's what will steal from you and kill you and destroy you. But Jesus came so that you may have life and have it to the full. That is what we believe. And that is what we hope to exemplify on this podcast.
Absolutely.
A full life that is good because of God and only God himself.
Man, thank you guys. This was a fun episode.
It always is, isn't it?
It really is. There's not a not fun being like, could have done without that one. Oh, bro. But talking about God, talking about how good he is, sitting here with you, bro, let's keep doing it.
We love this.
We'll be back again. We got more questions. This is life. We got more questions to come. We hope to see you guys there next time.
We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.
Later.
Peace.